Good morning. I've been asked many times for a list of equipment that I actually use. You might have noticed me clapping there at the beginning of that. It's because I use separate sound from a separate camera. But let's go through the equipment first. So the camera I use, generally speaking, is a Canon 60D. I have used the 5D Mark II many times, but the price of the 5D versus the price of the 60D versus the results meant the 60D was a better buy. The only real difference is it's a cropped sensor on the 60D, which means you get less of a wide field of view from certain lenses. So a 50mm lens turns into like a much smaller version of it, but you still get the depth of field and you still get all of the good stuff that you would have gotten from the 5D Mark II, but the 60D was where I wanted to go because of the price of it. I wanted to spend more money on lenses than anything else. So the lens I have on this one at the moment, which is my go-to lens, is the 17 to 85mm Canon lens. It has served me incredibly well, and it's been a good companion no matter what, and it's the one lens that I can bring pretty much anywhere. I also use another stock lens, which I can't think of the size of now. It just comes stock on a Canon 500D, there is the general lens. I use that for actually filming inside the car because the weight of the lens, because I film on a Fat Gecko mount, it's called. You can look it up. It's by Delkin. It's called a Fat Gecko, if you want to know. It sticks on the inside of the windscreen and I can rest my camera on it and I don't need to touch the camera. But because of the weight of the camera, the Fat Gecko would move around a lot or bounce around a lot with a heavy lens on it. So I use a very light lens. I also use a 50mm lens, a nifty 50, every once in a while. You can look that up. It's always good results no matter what you do, but they are pretty limited use. In fairness, for what I do, it's fairly limited. It is really, really huge depth of field. It's so thin, you can focus on one letter and the other end of the letters are out of focus. Sound is recorded on a Zoom H2 mic, which is the mic is right here in front of me. You'll see that there, it's right there. I use that on a little tripod in front of me when I'm doing exterior stuff like this and there's very little wind. Inside the car I tend to use a little lapel mic. It doesn't really matter what the mic is, that's relevant, pick whatever one you want. You don't have to go down the Sennheiser route. It is the industry standard, the wireless Sennheiser mics, but they are enormously expensive, like £500 to €800. It's just crazy, and they don't come up second hand very often because people tend to hold on to them. They don't break very often either. I will eventually, I hope, cut into that. Another reason for using a 60D is because it has a flip out screen. The screen flips out the side of it. I can see myself on a little tiny screen right here beside the camera, so I know I'm in frame and I know I'm framed properly, and you know I can see that that's the top and that's the bottom, and it's easy. Really, I also use a glide rail, which the camera is standing on right now. It's a glide thing, so I can do this in the middle of a shot. I just loosen that little nut there. I can do that in the middle of a shot. You can see it glide back and forward. It is the half-meter one, and I also use a Manfrotto tripod. And I use I think that's a 701 HDV head, which isn't really a movie one, but I wanted something that I could do stills or movies. I could do pretty much anything on. That's the whole point. Everything I've chosen is price versus weight versus ease of use, because I work on my own. There's no point in getting a very complicated camera or a very complicated setup when you're all on your own in the middle of nowhere like I am right now, sitting out at my usual spot where I film. I have an Audi A6 bi-turbo there to film, and there's no point in doing all that and getting yourself terribly complicated, because you'll spend so much time just setting up a shot that all your time is gone. The review doesn't happen. Okay, so it's because I work on my own. If it's someone else with me, maybe I'd get more complicated. I have used Canon C300, I have used a Red One, I have used Epic stuff, and I have used loads of other cameras. But generally speaking, it's the Canon 60D that does almost all the work you see on the screen at some point or another. I have a backup camera, it's a very old one, it's a Canon 500D. That is there purely to get a second angle on something if I really want to film two things, so like an interview or something. I film with the main camera here and the second camera over there, get a second angle on things. That's generally it with equipment. I don't really use a whole lot more. I have a couple of little tips and tricks and things that I do, but generally speaking, I don't do a whole lot more with equipment. I edit on Adobe stuff. It's CS5 I think I use. I really only use Premiere Pro. I don't really use anything else, but you could edit, quite honestly, what I do and how I do it The editing is pretty straightforward. There isn't a huge amount of After Effects used in it. Most of the stuff you see is just basically color corrected, and so you could probably edit mostly on Windows Movie Maker, which comes stock standard with Microsoft Windows. You could use there's a couple of good programs, a couple of good kind of free programs that I can think of. I might throw a list up on the side of the screen if I can think of them. And that's really it. It's that fairly straightforward. I better talk about settings. I render out in H.264 at 1080p, 25 frames a second. That's what I render out at, and that's what gets uploaded directly to YouTube. YouTube again compress that, and then it gets shown on your screen. That's really all the render settings. I don't really mess around with it after that. Generally, the settings on the camera are 25 frames a second at 1080p. That's fairly straightforward. It's not that difficult. I film in PAL, so that's why it's 25 frames a second. In case you're wondering about the 30 frames a second thing, that's NTSC. And I don't really do a whole lot more than that, to be honest with you. It's that straightforward. I rely basically on the visuals, what you see on screen and what you see sitting in the car, which is just basically everything in the camera on auto, stuck to the windscreen, and then I just start talking. It's not that difficult. If you want a good setup for yourself to start out, if you're going to start out along the road of doing YouTube videos in general, think price versus complexity. So don't go at the bottom end of the Canon range, because you will very fast find the limit of it. Okay, you will very quickly get to that limit of that camera. You will, if you get good at it, you'll outgrow it very fast, and you'll end up having to buy another camera anyway. So start off with something like a 60D. It's very good price, but yet it's able to do full movies. It can record for 12 or 13 minutes or something in 1080p. Get yourself a 16 or a 32 gigabyte card, preferably a 16. Buy two 16s. I'll tell you why in a while. Because 32s don't work in some other things, because you can use them, you can move them around. You can move a 16 gigabyte to other devices and it'll recognize straight away. Some 32s don't have that problem. So buy two 16s. Get yourself a GoPro. Buy a second-hand one. Don't bother running out to buy a Hero 3. Don't tear off and kill yourself trying to get all these things. Think second-hand, think used, think something that's low investment, high yield, something that will continue to work. Canon 60D has given me no trouble since I bought it. The GoPro Hero 2 I use, and I film in the narrowest version at 1080p. That's really it, at 30 frames a second as well. I think it's 30, or is it 25? I think it's 25. I think I set that one at PAL as well. The reason I use Adobe is because I don't have to render out all the tracks before I throw it all together. It's just there on the screen. I just drop it onto the timeline and bang, it's there in front of me. I can start editing immediately. It is a full-time job. If you're going to take on doing YouTube videos, it is more complex than you imagine. Game ones are fairly straightforward, game videos and things. Gadget ones are pretty straightforward, things that are static. But I obviously film outside in the daylight with a car, right, that's like 20 feet long, and I have to move it and drive it by the cameras and drive it by the cars. All that sort of stuff. So it can be very complicated to get up to this kind of level to do this. It has taken me 3 years to get the knack of how to do this properly. It probably take another 3 years to actually get it right. Anyway, that is the equipment list. If you've got questions, leave them in the comments. It's always good. Stick them down there in the little comment things. Don't email me directly unless the comment is very, very long. It's messy when you email me directly, because I answer them, but they don't appear in the comments. Like, share and subscribe, which is what everybody else seems to be running at these days. Try and share and subscribe and things. Tell your friends about the car videos if you're into cars. Gadgets are gaining steam now. Later on this year I'll be doing lots of other stuff as well. There's a new kind of a series coming thing as well for YouTube. It's called Keep It Local, and you'll see it on your screens probably towards the end of this year. That's going to be pretty big. I'm filming that, directing that. I'm actually presenting some of it as well. There's another girl in it with me called Nikki who's going to present some of it too. That's going to be very interesting. You'll see that. It'll be good. It's better than you think. We're also going to continue with the cars. I have the A6 bi-turbo with me today, which I'm just going to film right now. I literally pulled up here, set up the cameras, and away we go. So keep it simple is the most important part. Best advice I can give you is keep it simple. Watch the YouTube videos. There are so many guys out there who do really, really, really good tutorials on very simple aspects. I highly recommend Film Riot, particularly their older stuff, where they went through how to set up and frame shots and how to do things and how to kind of get depth of field and stuff. It was very good. But I do recommend those. There's loads of guys out there right now doing really genuine, good stuff. Don't build things unless you really have to. I was going to build one of these jibs, or not a jib, a dolly, and I ended up just buying this glide rail thing, and it's cost me nothing. And it works as a handheld. You can throw it up on your shoulder and work around it as a handheld one as well. Invest in it. Look at it. It's not very big money. You know, you could probably spend 3 or 4 days building one of these glide things, and it'll only work for a week. Where you just buy one of them, and that's worked for me for over 12 months. It's worked perfectly every time. I've never had any trouble with it at all. Same applies for most of the stuff. You can generally buy a decent rig of everything. Don't spend big money on thinking you need this, you need that, you need something else. Start small. Get yourself a Canon 60D, stock lens, whatever's the cheap option to get into it. See if you can get one second hand. Get everything that you can second hand. The only thing I would change, I'd buy a H4N, not a H2. That's a H2. I'd buy a H4. Just because that was a little bit limited. That said, that's all you need really to get yourself going. People will watch something that's filmed on a potato, but they will not listen to it unless the sound is pretty good. That's the biggest tip I can give you today, right now here. Get good sound. If the sound isn't good, they won't watch it. So now, right, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to go film my car, which is right over there, and I'll see you on the far side.